Doc. Someday when the team's up against it, breaks are beating the boys. Ask them to go in there with all they've got. Win just one for the Kipper.
Welcome to Mountain Dew Rants. I'm Terry. This is Paul. And in case you didn't know, we're brothers. And I think Mom always did like you best. I don't know. Steve,
well, I think she did. I don't blame her. I don't blame her.
And Justin, we're giving you a wrap-up of the season, a wrap-up of the Oklahoma State game. And just want to give a shout-out to some of our people who have commented. Thank you so much. A lot of you folks from Kansas State, the preview we did miss last week again, so we're kind of being spotty. Sorry about that. But thanks to Nick 57, Brent Lunker, Gage Byers, of course Steve P. You know who you are, Jack Dixon. Thank you, folks, for commenting, and thank you for watching. We appreciate that.
I'm not sorry that we missed it. We put out good stuff when it's ready for good stuff. Some of that stuff wasn't as good. Today we're here to talk about the Oklahoma State game and wrap up the season. Give you a few thoughts on the wrap up. And my first thought is Nico is undefeated.
He is undefeated. Now, he was a dazzling 2 for 9.
2 for passing, 9,
right. How can you lose?
Nico is our backup quarterback.
Third
string quarterback who came in after the second string quarterback, Green, got injured.
By the way, if you watch the game, do you know what targeting is? Because he hit him with the crown of the helmet to the crown of Nico's helmet. Gave him a concussion.
Green's helmet.
Oh, excuse me, Green. Thank you. And concussed him, and he went out of the game. But no targeting. Nobody it's all right. You got to temper justice with mercy.
To bring you up to speed, West Virginia won 24-19 over the Oklahoma State Cowboys in Oklahoma.
Yes.
That was a 7-5 team that was ranked in some categories in their own stadium. It broke a 7-game losing streak that West Virginia had against Oklahoma State, and it broke Oklahoma State's home winning streak of 14 straight games. And it was in a downpour.
And I don't care about the weather, and I don't care about their quarterback being hurt. They're Oklahoma State. There's still Mike Gundy's on the sideline, and we went in there and won that game with a team that was 4-7 with nothing to play for.
And Oklahoma State's heading towards a bowl. And we did it with a third-string quarterback and a fourth-string running back, Jalen Anderson, a redshirt freshman, our fourth running back, who ran for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. He'd only had 120 yards the entire season prior to that game.
Oh, we did that without James Gamitter, our starting left guard, without Jordan White, who was original starting right guard, Tomas Remack, and then a platoon at right.
Our cornerback, Charles Woods, a number of people. We'd been shredded up. We didn't have our starting quarterback. We didn't have our second-string quarterback, and we beat them in their backyard. Now, West Virginia was down 10-7 at the half. And in the third quarter, Jalen Anderson ran for 54 yards and 57 yards on breakout runs. And that was during a 3-minute span in the third quarter, putting us up 21-10, and we never lost the lead after that.
The offensive line must have done a pretty good job on those things, don't you think? I mean, I know people have been calling for our offensive line coach's job for a while. I don't think you know what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about. He is building a very good offensive line.
This may be the best offensive line we've had since the day of Tyler Orlowski.
I agree. He's All-American center, yep.
So Leg added a 34-yard field goal. The game ended 24-19, and Oklahoma State was not going to win that. You could tell. We had a total of 250 yards rushing on the ground with our backup starters. Only 110 total yards in the first half, but we had 152 yards rushing in that third quarter. Green threw an interception, but he also ran for a touchdown. Nico was 2 for 9, and I don't know if many people know that, but Daniels was in and threw 1 pass and was incomplete. That's what the stats showed. Polendi caught 2 catches, and Mathis caught 2 catches.
I don't think Daniels played at all.
That's what the stats said on CBS. You can look it up. Anyway, West Virginia at 5-7. scored 7 points in the first quarter, nothing in the second quarter, 14 points, 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, and 3 in the fourth. Oklahoma State at 7-5, they scored nothing, 10, 9, and nothing. At one point, they tried a 2-point conversion, and it failed. So West Virginia, at the end of the season now, has won 2 of its last 3 games. Both the Oklahoma teams, both in the pouring rain. And frankly, I think the other theme is that our defense is improving.
I agree with you there. Again, we won these games more like I think way our coach likes to play. We won the one 23-20. We won the other one 24-19. When the other teams can get into a track meet, they outscore us. And our defense wasn't good enough to keep us in it, and our offense wasn't good enough to stay in a lot of these games. So that's my assessment.
That's a good overview. And not to get too nerdy, because I'm not crazy about that. The Oklahoma State team had averaged 52 points per game in their out-of-conference schedule for the first 3 games. Then when they got into conference schedule, they were averaging 40 points a game until they played Kansas State. So they put a lot of points up on the board. The Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, and Oklahoma games that they played, they averaged 12 points a game. Most of that had to do with their quarterback being out.
He was hurt. They had some injuries. They had some things go wrong for him this year, that's for sure.
And they had some problems with their defense as well. But they're very disappointed. They were looking to fire their coach. That's a big thing now. You fire your coach.
Well, Gundy's got it. He's not going anywhere.
In the meantime, West Virginia was averaging 43 points a game, not 52, but 43 points a game in our out-of-conference, or our first 4 games, because one of those games was Kansas was in conference, and that was an overtime game where he had 42. Then we got into the conference schedule, and that offense that we were hoping would at least match last year under Daggy
looked pretty good our first couple of games.
But once we got into the Texas and beyond, we averaged 24.5 points a game. That was about what we did last year with Daggy as a quarterback. Yeah. Not only that, but our defense in conference gave up 38 points a game. Oof. So we weren't scoring enough to win the horse race. And if you don't count the Oklahoma game that we won against Oklahoma at home. We beat them 23-20. We held them to 20 points. If you don't count that game, we averaged giving up 41 points per game. That's no defense. That's essentially no defense. Now, the good news is, towards the end of the season, the defense got, I would say better, but really it's less bad.
Well, I go with that, yeah.
In our last 3 games, we beat Oklahoma 23-20, only giving up 20 points. We lost to Kansas State 48-31, but our defense didn't give up. 2 of those touchdowns were on turnovers, Green threw interceptions. One was a pick six. So that's 14 points. And then we missed field goals and we missed extra points, forcing us to go for 2 and not making them. That totaled another 7 points. So you could argue that 21 of those points really weren't on the defense, and that we only really gave up 27 points to Kansas State, very good team. If that's the case, we're only giving up 22 points the last 3 games, especially since Oklahoma State only got 19 on us.
That's true. Well,
don't get me wrong. I saw those games. The defense is not good.
They're not good, no.
But they're not as bad as they were in the middle of the season. Seem to have.
And and secondary was the biggest problem. And even I would have liked to have seen them at least have a chance without decimated by injuries. Even though they weren't good, I don't think they were real good. But they had true freshmen out there playing.
We brought in people in the transfer portal that had been playing at lower level schools. They're not worthy of playing.
And they couldn't stay healthy. They were out every time you turned around.
Somebody was injured all the time. But Big 12 receivers are as good a receivers as you're going to see in college football. They're tall, they're strong, they're lanky, and they get balls thrown to them. You can't take a 5'10", 175-pound guy and have him cover a 6'6", 220-pound receiver. He can't
run just as fast.
It runs just as fast, and that's obvious. Plus, and I don't mean to rant about my own team, but they don't tackle. They tackle standing up. They bump with their chest rather than their shoulder pads. And very few of our defense, even our linebackers, we're planting people by hitting them with their shoulders.
We didn't get a lot of good hits this year, that's true. Well, that brings us to this Big 12 championship games coming up this Saturday. Saturday, not Sunday. It's
Last week he said
I said
Sunday when he
by
meant
mistake.
Saturday. He's been beating himself up over it.
TCU, who is undefeated.
That's why Mother
everybody.
liked me best.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Beating everybody the whole season long. Never lost a game, including beating Kansas State, and have to play Kansas State again. Now, it's the only conference of all of them that the teams have to play again for the conference championship, which is not really correct. But for what it's worth, I'm pulling for you, K-State. Deuce, I want to see you. I would like to see you knock off TCU. I know that makes me not a conference guy because I'm supposed to root for TCU to be a conference guy to get to the college football playoffs and root for them. But I'm sorry.
Let me unravel
I'm a
that
K-State
a little
guy.
slower. A little bit slower. Right now, TCU, representing the Big 12, would be in the college football playoffs, the top 4 teams, because they're undefeated.
Even though they don't want to put them in there, they'd have to.
But
There's nothing they
are
can do.
required in the Big 12 to play the second place team another time. And if they lose that, they won't be in the top 4.
Because there's only 10 teams, we all play everybody else in the conference. Other conferences have more teams, so they play somebody in the conference championship that they haven't played during the season.
The other conferences play different divisions. They don't have to play the same team twice. It's hard to beat the same team twice. They get to know you. Now, if you're a conference loyalist and you're rooting for the Big 12, you want TCU to get in the finals and win the championship. But my brother here doesn't care for TCU. He's rooting for Kansas. I don't know if that has something to do with Kansas watching our broadcast in great numbers or not.
I just don't like TCU.
But he's rooting for Kansas to upset things.
I
Good
don't like Sonny Dykes, and I've never really cared for that dude that hikes up his drawers that's went to Texas. But moving on.
You're going to alienate your viewers here now. And speaking of viewers, let me tell you, we've gotten some messages now. Some of these may be serious, some not so much. From some of our viewers, I wanted to respond to some of them. For example, Tim G said, WVU never seems to have a winning record. We used to under a previous coach, and now we don't. Fans don't like this mediocrity. Something has to change.
Man, that's good. That's good.
So I want you to know, Tim, I went and I spoke to Neil Brown directly about this. And he was resistant at first.
Yeah,
he told me, he said, 6 wins is really what his goal for his team was. That's how he liked to run the program. Mediocrity is really what he's been striving for. In fact, he said his biggest challenge in some of these games was getting good players to make mistakes so that we would lose the games. But
it's hard to get a guy to do that, yeah.
But so we had to threaten him. We told him, we're going to fire you. We're going to kidnap your kids. We're going to flatten your tires. We're gonna take away your relaxation rooms. You better get out of this mediocrity. And he wasn't happy, but he said, okay. He promises next year he's going to try to win a few more games, and he's going to follow the suggestions of the fans.
You know, he probably never really had it put to him that way. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he just didn't understand. But
fortunately, the fans are also out there. We got another letter here from Bill B. He says, you know, we never seem to get enough pressure on the quarterback. That's why we lose games. So I took that up with Jordan Leslie, our defensive coordinator. I said, Bill wants us to get more pressure on the quarterback, and Jordan was receptive. He said he promised to look into that suggestion. He said he had heard some of the other players talking about that as maybe a good thing to do. So he's going to have a meeting and discuss it in the offseason.
Well, that's good. At least they're looking into it.
And we may very well start putting pressure on the quarterback. And if we put pressure on the quarterback and we win more games, thank you, Bill B., for doing that. Now, somebody else suggested that maybe if the receivers for the other team were covered, it might be helpful. But I didn't want to confuse
that's
things.
Way too much. Yeah, that's too deep.
We just
get to that basic. If he doesn't understand the basics, how's he going to understand the next year?
Because a lot of these guys, you know, they're not trying very hard.
They really need to.
And then the last one I got was from John S. He wrote to me and said, we need to fire this coach immediately.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
His offense is predictable.
Yeah, well, yeah.
His defense sucks.
Yeah.
He lost to Pitt.
Yeah.
He never gets us to a good bowl.
Yeah, you're right. 4 years, man. Come on.
And he said, we have a good coach available. It's time for a change. He suggests a fellow named Frank Signetti now. He says we should fire this Bobby Bowden character. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, wait a minute. This letter's from 1975.
Yeah, that's an old letter, man.
Yeah.
We might have to stop.
But it was what happened. We did fire Bobby Bowden and hired Frank Signetti. Well, that turned out pretty good. Pretty good news for the next couple of years anyway.
Yeah,
so thank you. Keep those letters coming in. We'll pass them along to the coaches, and maybe we can get it through their thick heads that we know how to win this.
Maybe
stuff.
they just don't understand these
I'm
coaches.
sure that's all it is. I'm sure maybe they work with us.
For what it's worth, we also are Mountaineer basketball fans. Maybe not as passionate as football, but we had a pretty good weekend last weekend. We did lose to Purdue, and but we only lost to them by 12 points. And actually, I never thought we'd win, but we got close in that game.
Turns out Purdue's pretty tough.
Purdue's really good. They beat Duke. They beat Gonzaga by 19 and 20 points. And they're ranked number 5 right now. And then we went on to win a couple of games.
The old way we used to measure how good we were by how bad we got beat, and we got beat less bad by Purdue than any of those other teams in that tournament.
Keep an eye on this team because think about this. We've played 7 games, and it's a lot of transfers. And basketball, much more than football, you need a cohesive type of unit. Mr. Huggins is doing. If this team gets more cohesive, it could be really good. So
I watched the Purdue
we'll be ranting. We'll be ranting.
The Purdue got ahead by 10 points, and we stayed pretty even from that point forward.
We did.
They didn't gain. We didn't. We would get back, but they didn't go up to 20 and back down to 10.
I never felt like we were going to win. I never thought we would win that game, but I thought we were equal with them. They just blitzed us early on.
They got us early. They are very good, and very early on they were hitting 3-pointers from outside. And I remember thinking to myself, they can't keep doing that all night.
You know what I'll say about that is that they were known for this big 7'4" guy inside. Yeah. We had laid back. We wanted to help with him. Don't let him beat you. And then they had some freshmen playing guards that were beating us from the outside. So they beat us in a way that we didn't expect. So credit to them. They're a good team. So
now, if you have any suggestions for Huggins, write us in on that. We'll let him know what he needs
like
to
when
do.
You shoot it, making
it. Yeah, layups is a good thing.
Yeah.
Huggins says we should take care of the ball.
Yeah.
And get rebounds.
I've never heard him
and
say
get
that
rebounds.
before. Just throw it at their feet. And I love Huggins. One of the best interviews you'd ever hear. So, thank you so much for listening. The last thing before I got something I got to rant about. I was trying to text somebody today, and every time I put a word in, it would autocorrect. Have you ever dealt with autocorrect?
I've heard of that.
I think the guy that invented autocorrect ought to go straight to heel. That's what I believe. And I don't think he's worth a shirt.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching.
And approve of our... Feel free to write in on us. We'll be at that.
Thank you. We love you.